I'm going to tell you a few different activities that you can use to tell a story in class. This I used for the basis of our story, a purchase from the Storyteller's Corner, available on Teachers Pay Teachers. This story was called El Vampiro, and it includes a lot of different options from the download itself. But here's what I did with this story. Now, this store is really geared towards elementary students, but a lot of her stories can also be applied to a middle school classroom or an early high school classroom, level 1 language. The language is at the perfect level for them. And I found this story engaging, so what I did is, very first day I told a story in class about a vampire. I used this as our basis, but I told a slightly different story. So in class, the story was that the vampire had a problem. He was making soup, but he didn't have chicken. So he needed to go out to buy chicken, but it was sunny outside and he couldn't leave his house. When it was nighttime, the stores were closed. So what was he going to do? So we told that story in class using student actors. Students are engaged. They see the story. It's being acted out. They have that visual, so it helps in their comprehension of what's happening. Any new words I can write on the board. I can do a quick translation of. So we acted that out on day 1. Day 2, I typed up the story. I always make sure we have a text of a story that we act out. So the first day, they are listening and hearing the story. Day 2, they are reading the story. And what I do, sometimes I'll bold some new words or some key words that I want to focus on. So we read the story in class. This particular day, we did a kind of volleyball read where I read a sentence in Spanish and the students translated to English. So I made sure that everyone understood the story and what it was, the words meant. Students have a copy of this so they can write any translations that they need to. I tell them if they're not 100% confident in what it means, that they should write notes. New words, obviously, we're all going to write that down. So we go over the text. That was day 2. Day 3, I'm going to do a different type of activity. And what is included in this purchase is a student black and white. You get the full color copy, a presentation that you can present to the class and go over the story and read it together. You can also use this as a printable booklet, and sometimes I will print her stories out and put them in my classroom library for FVR. But what I wanted to do with this story was to create a matching activity where the students had to actually put the story in order. You'll get a sheet of 4 slides per paper. That was a little too big for me. This story had a lot of slides, probably more bigger than I usually work with. So I took some of those stories out, some of those slides out, and what I did was print it 2 pages per sheet. I changed the layout on my print settings so that I would get 8 slides per page, and that was more manageable, smaller size to work with. I only needed to print 3 pages that way. And then I cut them up into little squares, and I pass these out to students. Students work in groups of 2, and they have to put the sentence in order. Now, this story is actually in the past tense. We told our story on day 1 in the present tense, and that's okay that it's not the same. Students can recognize tiene and tenía. I just tell them, okay, tenía is the past tense of had. So it's not a big deal. I don't have to explicitly teach the imperfect tense, the preterite tense. They know what the story looks like already. Now the details are a little different since it's a parallel story. So with a partner, they read the text, they put it in order, which comes first, which comes second, and they put the whole story together. As they finish, I might go around to groups and say, oh, this one is not in that spot. Take a look at that one again. At the end, when every group is about finished, then we go over it as a class. So one option to do that is I take my version, which is in order, and I will just read the translation. So I'll tell the class, okay, number 1 is llegaron. Okay, so it's in Spanish, and I'm going to actually tell the answer in English. I'm going to say, okay, the answer is they arrived to the library, but it was closed. It was only open during the day. And the students have to check on their paper, does it match? Is that what they have? And so they're hearing the translation, they're reading it again in Spanish, they're getting that multiple input. So that's one option. Another option is you can have students, you could discuss it in Spanish, you can read the answers in Spanish so they hear the Spanish version again, or you can have students say, what do you have, number one? Do you guys have that as well? The other groups, do you agree? And I'm having that conversation in Spanish, of course. So then they have the answers, they're reading it again for that third time, multiple inputs. Then I put them in an envelope, I can use that for the next class. So I only have to make about as many as I need. The most students I have in a class divided by 2 because they're working in groups, and that's how many envelopes I have. So that is one way that you can use stories with some different types of activities in the Storytelling CI classroom. If you have any questions, let us know. Send us an email. You can also read more on our blog, SpanishPlans.org. Thanks for listening.